Nathaniel James hadn't planned on walking a stranger's dog that morning. He was already late. His 6-year-old son was crying over a lost Lego piece, and their toaster had just sparked itself into early retirement. "Dad, I can't find the red ninja," Nolan wailed from the floor, where Legos were scattered like confetti after a storm. Nathaniel crouched down, ruffling his son's hair. "How about the blue one today? Blue's faster anyway. But red's the leader." He sighed, grabbing his work boots and mentally calculating how late he'd be for his shift at the hardware store. "We'll find him after school, okay? I promise." As they stepped out of their tiny rented duplex in the quiet neighborhood of Oakwood Hills, a place that tried hard to look middle class but couldn't shake the peeling paint, Nathaniel noticed a woman struggling with a massive golden retriever across the street. The dog was practically dragging her down the sidewalk. "Hey," she called, her voice breathless. "Excuse me, sir, hey." Nathaniel turned, Nolan clinging to his hand. The woman jogged across the street awkwardly, clutching the leash like a lifeline. "I'm sorry, I just moved in yesterday. I'm Harper Ellington, and this is Moose. He's insane." Moose barked in agreement. She was tall, with messy auburn hair swept into a ponytail and eyes the color of honey. She wore leggings, a sweatshirt that looked way too expensive for this neighborhood, and sunglasses pushed up on her head. Nathaniel blinked.
Hi. I'm Nathaniel."
"And that's Nolan."
E.
Nolan waved, then pointed. "That dog's huge." Harper laughed.
"Tell me about it."
"Listen, I know this is crazy, but I have a work call in 20 minutes and he needs a walk. Could I pay you to walk him?" "Just once." Nathaniel hesitated. "I'll pay you $40, she added quickly. He stared. 40.
Cash. Now.
Please." Nolan looked up at him. "Dad. That's 40. Harper was already digging into her designer gym bag, pulling out two $20 bills. "I promise he's sweet. Just strong. And very distractible." Nathaniel took the leash before he could overthink it. Moose instantly lunged toward a squirrel, nearly yanking his arm off. All right, okay, let's go." Harper grinned. "You're a lifesaver. I owe you big time." As she jogged back into her house, Nathaniel stared after her for a second. No one in Oakwood Hills wore sneakers that clean. By the end of the walk, Moose had peed on 3 mailboxes, tried to chase 2 cats, and forced Nathaniel to jog more than he had in 6 years. But the dog liked Nolan, walking calmly when the boy held the leash. Nathaniel brought Moose back to the sleek modern house. Harper had moved into the only property on the block with a smart gate and imported stone driveway. He knocked once. She opened it, phone pressed to her ear, and mimed "thank you" with a warm smile. She handed him a little envelope and waved him off. Inside the envelope, another 20.
$60.
For one walk. That night, Nathaniel stared at the cash on the kitchen table while Nolan brushed his teeth. Their fridge had been making a strange humming noise for a week. He could finally call the repair guy. The next morning, Harper was waiting outside with Moose. "Same deal?" she asked, hopeful. He tilted his head. "You sure you want me walking your dog every day?" "I've never seen him sit so calmly before," she said, watching as Moose licked Nolan's hand. "I think he likes you guys." They made it a routine. Every morning, Nathaniel walked Moose while Harper rushed to her meetings. She never said what she did exactly, but she was always on calls, always typing on a sleek laptop. She started offering him snacks when he dropped the dog off. Homemade muffins. Smoothies. Once, a cappuccino in a cup with his name spelled right. "You don't have to keep feeding me," he said one morning, accepting a banana muffin anyway. "I know," Harper said, smiling. "But you look like you never slow down." He laughed. "Single dad life." She blinked, surprised. "No mom in the picture?" "Nope. She left when Nolan was 2. Said she wasn't built for diapers and cartoons." Harper's face softened. "That's rough." Nathaniel shrugged. We manage. He's my whole world. She watched him for a second too long, then looked away. You're a good dad, Nathaniel. Thanks, he said quietly. A week later, Harper invited them in. I just made pancakes, she said, holding open the door. And I made too many. Her house looked like it belonged in a magazine, white marble countertops, gold hardware, floor-to-ceiling windows. Nolan's eyes went wide.
Whoa.
Your house is so shiny. She laughed. You can touch stuff, don't worry. They sat at the long glass table, Moose curled beneath Nolan's feet. Nathaniel took a bite of the pancake and froze. Okay, this is not a normal pancake. What's in this? Harper smirked. Hazelnut ricotta. And lemon zest. He blinked. That sounds made up. She laughed. It's not. You're just used to box mix.
He grinned.
You're not wrong. For the first time in a long time, Nathaniel felt relaxed. He wasn't thinking about grocery bills or overdue electric bills or whether Nolan's shoes were too tight. He was just sitting at a table, eating good food, watching his son laugh. And Harper was watching him like she hadn't smiled like this in a long, long time. 2 weeks later, she asked him to stay for dinner. I ordered too much sushi, she said casually. And Nolan said he's never tried it. Nope, Nolan said proudly. But I like fish sticks. They stayed for hours. Nolan fell asleep on the couch watching a movie with Moose snuggled next to him. Harper turned to Nathaniel, voice soft. You don't get much time for yourself, do you? He shook his head. I can't afford to. So, what would you do if you could? He looked at her. Really looked at her. Her eyes sparkled under the dim lights, her lips slightly parted, like she was holding back something. I'd probably be right here, he said. Her throat bobbed. That's a good answer. They stared at each other. The air between them shifted. Her hand brushed his on the wine glass. I should get Nolan home, he said, voice rough. She nodded, but she didn't move her hand. You're different than anyone I've ever met, she whispered. He smiled. You're rich, aren't you? She froze. He leaned in slightly. No one makes hazelnut ricotta pancakes without being at least suspiciously wealthy. For a second, she looked terrified. Then she burst out laughing. Guilty. Technically. Technically? She stood, walking over to a drawer, pulling out a glossy magazine. She handed it to him. On the cover, her face. Underneath it, the words, Harper Ellington, tech billionaire turned reclusive CEO. Nathaniel stared at it, then looked up. You're a billionaire? She bit her lip. Still want to walk my dog? You're a billionaire? Nathaniel repeated, lowering the magazine slowly, like it was fragile. Harper's jaw tensed.
Technically, yes.
But I'm not. I'm not whatever that article makes me look like. Nathaniel glanced at the photo again, the glossy red carpet image, the headline boasting her company's IPO valuation. This says you own a tech firm that builds AI platforms for financial institutions. I built it with my brother, she said, stepping away to tidy the countertop even though nothing was out of place. He passed away last year. I stepped back after that. Moved here to breathe. Nathaniel didn't speak right away. The silence stretched between them, not uncomfortable, just full like it suddenly had weight. He looked back at the couch, where Nolan was still curled up against Moose, deep in sleep. I don't understand, he finally said. Why this neighborhood? Why walk your own dog if you could hire someone? Why ask me? She leaned against the counter, arms crossed. Because I didn't want someone who saw my name and decided I was worth tolerating for a paycheck. You didn't know who I was. You were kind anyway. That doesn't answer the first part. She gave a small shrug. I bought the place under a holding company. No one here knows me. I wanted to disappear without actually vanishing. Nathaniel stepped closer, the distance between them shrinking but not gone. You're hiding. Her mouth twitched, not into a smile, but something closer to exhaustion. I gave up everything to build that company. I thought if I walked away, I'd feel free. But it's like I stepped out of a glass tower and forgot how to breathe real air. And what? Walking moose was your way of finding oxygen? No, she said quietly. You were. He didn't expect that. His pulse caught, ears warming, but he didn't look away. I'm not some escape hatch from your past. I know, she said, stepping forward. You're the first person I've met in years who didn't want something from me. Nathaniel felt the ragged edge of his own resistance. He was used to being needed by Nolan, by customers at the hardware store, by life itself. But wanted? That was different. I wasn't supposed to tell you, she added. But then you made that joke about the pancakes, and I panicked. He ran a hand through his hair. So, the muffins? The sushi? The smoothies with names I couldn't pronounce. Those were guilt bribes. No, she said, her voice firmer now. Those were me trying to say thank you without scaring you off. He looked over at his son again, then at her. You could have picked anyone to walk your dog. I didn't want anyone, she said. I wanted you. Nathaniel looked down, his fingers tightening around the magazine. I can't give you what you're used to, Harper. I live paycheck to paycheck. My car has a dent in every panel. My idea of a big night out is adding bacon to our burgers. I don't care about any of that. Maybe not now, but eventually you will. Don't tell me what I'll feel, she said, her voice sharper than before. You don't know me well enough for that. He met her gaze. She didn't flinch. I don't, he admitted. But I do know what happens when people realize they've stepped out of one world and into another. They miss the temperature of their old life. They go back. Harper stepped even closer, the scent of jasmine clinging to her skin. Do I look like I'm going back? He didn't answer. Her hand brushed his arm, tentative but steady. I'm not going to pretend this makes sense, she said. But I feel more like myself eating pancakes in your kitchen than I ever did in a boardroom. Nathaniel exhaled, slow and uneven. You don't know what it's like, raising a kid alone. It changes you. It makes you smaller in some ways. Like the world forgets you exist unless you're buying diapers or paying rent. I don't want to forget you. He looked at her, searching for cracks. But her eyes didn't waver. Then we have a problem, he said. Why? Because I'm already falling for you, and I don't know if that's a blessing or a mistake. The words hung between them. Harper swallowed. Maybe let's figure it out one step at a time. He gave a reluctant nod. Starting with what? Dinner tomorrow. No sushi. Just you, me, and Nolan. I'll cook. I thought you were hiding from your past. I am. But I'm not hiding from you. Nathaniel finally allowed himself to smile, just a little. All right. But fair warning, Nolan's picky. If there's no ketchup, it's a crisis. I'll stock 3 kinds, she said. He leaned closer, just enough to feel the warmth of her breath. You really like to win, don't you? I like to be right, she whispered. And I think you're the first right thing I've chosen in a long time. From the couch, Nolan stirred, mumbling something about pirates in his sleep. Nathaniel stepped back, grounding himself. I should take him home. I'll walk you to the door. As they made their way to the entryway, Harper hesitated. She reached for something on the narrow table by the wall, a small, red toy ninja. Moose found this in the backyard, she said, holding it out. I think it belongs to your captain. Nathaniel took it slowly, staring at the familiar chipped paint. He's been missing for weeks. Harper smiled. Only this time it wasn't polished or practiced, it was real.
Well,
maybe it's a sign. Nathaniel looked from the toy to her. Or maybe your dog's just a better parent than I am. You're the best parent I've ever met. He didn't say anything to that. He just opened the door, Nolan half asleep in his arms, and walked into the night with the little red ninja tucked safely in his pocket. By the time Nathaniel knocked on Harper's door the following evening, Nolan was already bouncing on the balls of his feet, clutching a homemade card he'd drawn with crayons. "She said she has a surprise for you," Nolan whispered, eyes wide. "I think it's dessert. I hope it's not sushi dessert." Nathaniel chuckled under his breath. "Let's not judge it until we see it." Harper opened the door in soft linen pants and a navy blouse, barefoot, her hair pinned up casually. The smell of garlic, something roasted, and lemon met them like a warm welcome. But it wasn't the food that made Nathaniel pause, it was the way Harper looked at him. Like he was already home. "I hope you're hungry," she said, stepping aside. Nolan held up the card. "I made this for you. It's Moose fighting a robot." Harper gasped with delight, taking it like it was fine art. "This is going on my fridge. Front and center." Nolan beamed, then ran off to find Moose, who barked once in greeting, tail wagging like a metronome. Nathaniel lingered by the door, his gaze sweeping the house. The lighting was low, the table set with handmade ceramic dishes and cloth napkins folded like tiny boats. "I wasn't sure if you like salmon," Harper said, adjusting a pitcher of mint water on the table. "So, I made chicken too. And I may have gone overboard on the sides. You didn't have to do all this." "I know. I wanted to." He stepped closer, lowering his voice. "You're not trying to impress me, are you?" She gave a small shake of her head. "I already know I can't." That startled a laugh out of him. "You're not wrong." They ate together, all three of them, the conversation drifting between Nolan's obsession with dinosaurs and Harper's attempt to learn how to drive stick, which ended in her accidentally reversing into a decorative fountain. She confessed with a wince. "I haven't driven myself anywhere in years," she admitted. "There was always someone to do it. I didn't even realize I'd forgotten how." "That's kind of terrifying," Nathaniel said, raising an eyebrow. "It is, but sort of freeing too. I've made more mistakes in the last month than I have in the last 5 years. And I think I needed that." After dinner, Nolan turned on a cartoon in the living room, Moose curled up beside him once again. Harper brought out a tray of miniature cakes, each topped with edible gold flakes and berries. "Okay, now you're showing off," Nathaniel said, eyeing the tray. "These were not made by me," she confessed. "I picked them up from a little French place in the city. I was going to make brownies, but the batter exploded." "Don't ask." "I wasn't planning on it." Harper lowered herself onto the couch beside him, her knees pulled up slightly, one arm resting along the back of the cushions. "You know, I've had this image in my head for years. What success was supposed to look like. Jet setting, awards, headlines. But tonight, this," she gestured around them, "this feels more like success than any of that ever did." Nathaniel leaned back, eyes still on Nolan. "I think that image you had was built for someone else." "Maybe," she said quietly. "Or maybe I built it to prove something to someone who's not even around to see it anymore." He turned to face her. "Your brother?" She nodded once. "We grew up with nothing. Not even heat in the winters. When we built the company, we swore we'd never go back to that. But somewhere along the way, the success became the only thing I could see. After he died, it all felt pointless." Nathaniel didn't speak right away. Then, "Grief makes you chase illusions. I know that one firsthand." Harper turned toward him, her voice softer. "What did you lose?" He hesitated, then rubbed his palms together. "My father. When I was 14, he got sick and we didn't have insurance. I had to start working after school just to keep the lights on." "That's why you're so good with Nolan." "No," he said, shaking his head. "I'm good with Nolan because I love him more than anything. But being poor taught me how to prioritize. You learn fast what matters when you can't afford what doesn't." Harper studied him, the lines around her eyes tightening in something close to admiration. "You're not what I expected when I moved here. I doubt I'm what anyone expects." She reached out, her fingers brushing the back of his hand. "You're exactly what I didn't know I needed." He looked down at their hands, then back up at her. You keep saying things like that. But what happens when the real world catches up? I live in a duplex with a leaky roof. I can't take you to fancy restaurants or fly you to Paris for the weekend. I've been to Paris, she said simply, and I'd trade every five-star restaurant for someone who listens when I talk and doesn't treat me like a brand. Nathaniel studied her for a long moment. Then he leaned in, not to kiss her, but to rest his forehead against hers. I don't know where this is going, he murmured. But I want to find out. Her voice was barely audible. Me too. Nolan's voice broke the moment.
Dad.
Moose is licking the screen again. Nathaniel chuckled, pulling back. I should get him home. Harper stood too, brushing her hands on her pants. Walk you out. He nodded, scooping Nolan into his arms. Outside, the spring night was cool and quiet. A breeze carried the scent of blooming magnolia from somewhere down the block. Harper stood on the porch, arms crossed, but not defensively. She looked like she was holding something in. Nathaniel shifted Nolan's weight against his shoulder. You okay? I was thinking, she said slowly, about the article you saw. The one that said I stepped back from the company. What about it? I didn't just step back. I walked away. Sold my shares. Quietly. It's not public yet. He blinked. You sold? She nodded. All of it. I don't own a single piece anymore.
Why?
Her eyes found his. Because I don't want a life that doesn't have room for this. Nathaniel's voice was low. You gave up billions for a fresh start? I gave up noise, she corrected. I kept what matters. He looked at her for a long moment, then nodded once. All right. She stepped down one step, closer to him. Will you let me see you again tomorrow? He gave a half smile. You're going to have to walk your own dog tomorrow.
But yeah.
I'll be around. Good. He turned, walking toward his car, Nolan still asleep against his shoulder. Harper stayed there until the taillights disappeared. And for the first time in a long time, she didn't feel like she was leaving anything behind. The morning sun filtered through the kitchen window as Nathaniel packed Nolan's lunch, slicing cucumbers with a care he didn't realize he developed until recently. The quiet was different today, less burdened. Lighter. He glanced at the small magnet on the fridge, the one Nolan had made out of clay last year. It was crooked and uneven, but it stuck, just like everything lately. Harper was coming over that evening. Not for dinner, not for anything fancy, just to be part of their evening. No champagne, no designer desserts. Just her in their space. Do you think she'll want to play Uno with us? Nolan asked, hopping up on the counter. Nathaniel grinned. If she's brave. She's not scared of Moose, Nolan said thoughtfully. So, maybe she'll be okay. That afternoon, Nathaniel vacuumed the living room for the first time in weeks. Not because he thought she would care, but because he wanted her to know it mattered to him. He lit the candle Nolan picked out from the discount bin. It smelled like tangerines and something vaguely spicy. At 6, Harper knocked. No driver, no gate codes, no fanfare. She wore jeans and a faded sweatshirt with a college logo across the front. Her hair was down, curling slightly at the ends, and she held a cloth bag in one hand. Thought I'd bring over some things, she said, stepping inside. Board games, a puzzle, and she held up a wrapped bundle, the world's best grilled cheese. Nathaniel raised an eyebrow. Bold claim. You'll see. They ate on the floor, Nolan building a fort out of couch cushions and blankets, while Moose lazily sprawled across the rug. The grilled cheese was sharp white cheddar with caramelized onions on sourdough, and it made Nathaniel mutter something under his breath about never going back to American slices again. Harper laughed, pushing her plate aside. I thought about buying a little restaurant once. Not to run it, just to make food for people who needed it. What stopped you? I had a board of directors who thought anything that didn't produce a 10% return was a liability. Nathaniel watched her carefully. And now? I don't answer to anyone. Nolan popped his head out from behind a blanket. Dad, can she come with us to the fair tomorrow? Nathaniel blinked. Fair. Mrs. Connie gave us free tickets. Remember? You said if you didn't have to work, we could go. He nodded slowly, then looked at Harper. It's a small thing. Rides, kettle corn, a petting zoo. I love kettle corn, she said, her voice warm. If you'll have me, I'd love to come. The next day, Nathaniel took off early, the first time in 3 years he'd asked for a Saturday off without a second job lined up to cover the gap. He dropped Nolan off at his friend's house for a sleepover that night, knowing the kid would come home sticky with cotton candy and stories about goats. When he pulled up to Harper's house, she was already outside, her hair in a braid over one shoulder, wearing sneakers this time. She carried a thermos and a paper bag. For the road, she said, handing him the bag. Inside, 2 apple turnovers still warm. You always do this, he said, taking one. Do what? Make things better without trying. She glanced at him sideways. Maybe I'm trying harder than you think. The fairground was dusty and loud, filled with the smell of fried dough and engine grease. Harper lit up at the sight of everything, like she hadn't been to a place like this in years. Maybe she really hadn't. They rode the Ferris wheel, Harper gripping the side rail with white knuckles as they reached the top. I don't love heights, she admitted, laughing nervously. I thought you used to fly in private jets. Those had walls. He reached over and took her hand. You're safe. She looked at him, the tension in her shoulders slowly easing. With you, I know. They walked the grounds for hours. Harper tried everything. She dragged him into a funhouse mirror maze, screamed on the spinning teacups, and insisted on winning a stuffed frog for Nolan at the ring toss. She was terrible at it. Nathaniel was worse. They ended up bribing the teenager running the booth with a $10 bill. At sunset, they sat on a bench near the carousel, the sky streaked in pink and gold. Nathaniel noticed how Harper watched the kids riding in circles, the way her eyes followed them, soft and distant. Do you ever think about having your own? He asked quietly. Her fingers curled around the paper cup in her hands. I used to, but I thought I'd missed the window. Everything was about the next deal, the next acquisition. I didn't even realize 10 years had passed. You haven't missed anything. She looked at him then, her expression unguarded. You think so? I know so. She hesitated, then leaned her head against his shoulder. I want a life that's full of noise. Not the kind from investors or press. The kind where the floor creaks and a kid's yelling about dinosaurs and the dogs barking because someone dropped a cracker. He rested his cheek against her hair. That's the best kind. They stayed there until the lights flickered on across the fairground. When they finally stood to leave, she took his hand without asking. Back at her house, she invited him in. The lights were low, the air quiet. She poured them each a glass of wine, but neither touched it. Instead, they stood in the middle of the living room, inches apart. I want to stay, Nathaniel said. Harper took his face in her hands. Then stay. They didn't speak again that night. They didn't need to. The next morning, Nathaniel woke to sunlight streaming through unfamiliar curtains and the smell of coffee. Harper was sitting on the edge of the bed, one leg tucked beneath her, scrolling through something on a tablet. She looked over and smiled in that way that made his chest ache. I have something to show you, she said, setting the tablet in his lap. It was a proposal, an outline with his name at the top. I bought a building downtown, she said. It used to be a hardware store. It's empty now, but it has space for an office, a workshop, and a little cafe in the back. He stared at her. I want to build something with you, she said. Something real. You run it however you want. I'll stay out of it. But it's yours. He set the tablet aside, sitting up slowly. Why? Because you've spent your whole life holding things together for other people. I want to hold something up for you. He didn't answer right away. Then he reached for her hand. All right. Tears welled in her eyes. Really? I love you, he said. And I'm not afraid of what comes next if it's with you. She leaned in, kissing him softly. Then let's build it. All of it. 3 weeks later, the building was theirs. Nolan helped paint the door red. Harper baked muffins on the first day and handed them out for free. Nathaniel hung a sign in the window that said, "Open for real life." And for the first time ever, everything felt exactly right. The day of the new shop's opening arrived wrapped in a light breeze and sunshine so golden it felt scripted. The old building had been transformed inside and out into something completely new, yet still grounded in the bones of what had once been. A wooden sign carved with the name, Red Door Goods, hung above the entrance, its edges hand-sanded by Nathaniel himself. Nolan had picked the name, proudly pointing out that red means important. The front windows displayed local crafts, refurbished tools, and custom shelving Nathaniel had built in the evenings at home. In the back, the tiny cafe Harper envisioned had come to life with mismatched armchairs, a chalkboard menu, and a pastry case that already smelled like cinnamon and brown butter. Nathaniel adjusted the collar of his shirt, watching Nolan hand out paper cups of lemonade to the early visitors. The boy had insisted on wearing a clip-on tie and introduced himself as assistant manager to every single person who walked through the door. "You didn't have to make all this," Nathaniel said as Harper approached, handing him a small cloth-wrapped bundle. "I didn't," she said. "I just gave it space to grow." He unfolded the cloth and found a hand-carved nameplate with his initials burned into the wood. The back was signed in a tiny, scrawled version of Nolan's handwriting. "She said you needed a boss desk thing," Nolan called from across the room. Harper smiled. "He's very invested in your executive image." Nathaniel set the nameplate on the counter, then looked at her. "I don't know how you keep surprising me. I'm just getting started." The day moved in waves. Neighbors came in curious and left with jars of homemade jam, hand-forged tools, and stories about how the place reminded them of the town's earlier days. Nathaniel's old boss from the hardware store stopped by and shook his hand with a tight-lipped nod that didn't hide the pride in his eyes. Nolan's teacher brought cookies. Even Moose wore a little bandana that read "Shop Dog." By late afternoon, the energy had settled into something warm and steady. Harper wiped her hands on a towel behind the counter and leaned over to whisper, "Can I steal you for a moment?" Nathaniel followed her through the back door, past the storage shelves and into the alley where the late sun painted the bricks gold. She turned to face him, her fingers tucked into her back pockets as if she was holding something in again. "I talked to someone this week," she said, "about building permits. The lot next door is for sale. I thought maybe we could turn it into something. A garden. A space Nolan can play in safely. Maybe grow vegetables. You could build benches. He wants a tire swing." Nathaniel blinked. "You want to buy more? I want to build roots. With you. With him. This isn't just a project for me, Nathaniel. It's home." He studied her, this woman who had stepped out of a world of glass towers and endless zeros and into his life like she'd always belonged there. "You really want a garden? I want a life. And I want it with you." He reached for her hand, threading their fingers together. "Then let's grow whatever comes next." Later that night, after the last customer had left and the lights were dimmed, they sat on the shop floor with Nolan curled between them, half asleep with his head on Harper's lap. Moose was snoring, stretched out next to the broom closet. Nathaniel leaned back against the wall, looking around at the space they had carved out of nothing. "You sure you're happy with this?" he asked quietly. Harper brushed a curl from Nolan's forehead. "I've never been more sure of anything." He turned his head to look at her. "You've given up more than I can ever repay." "I didn't give anything up. I traded noise for meaning." He reached across and touched her cheek, his voice low. "I love you." She smiled, eyes soft. "I love you too." He kissed her there, amid the smell of wood shavings and lemon sugar, with his son asleep beside them and the rest of their lives just beginning. The seasons passed in color. Spring gave way to summer, and the garden next door bloomed with wild tomatoes, sunflowers, and a crooked little bench Nolan had painted in streaks of blue and green. The shop became a fixture in the neighborhood, a place where people came not just to buy things, but to feel grounded. They celebrated Nolan's 7th birthday in the cafe with cupcakes and a cardboard pirate ship. Harper taught him how to make lemonade from scratch. Nathaniel built him a treehouse out back, and Harper painted its name Sky Fort in big, looping letters. They didn't talk about the past much anymore. Not because it didn't matter, but because it had already served its purpose, bringing them here, to this strange and beautiful second chance. One evening, as the sun dipped behind the rooftops, Nathaniel brought Harper out to the edge of the garden. He had strung up lights between the fence posts, and a small table was set with 2 glasses of sparkling cider and a mason jar filled with wildflowers. She looked at him curiously. "What's this?" "I wanted to ask you something." She tilted her head, amused. "You already live with me. What more could you possibly want?" He pulled a small velvet box from his pocket and opened it. Inside, a simple gold band, shaped like roots curling into each other. "I want to spend the rest of my life building this with you. This garden, this shop, this family. Will you marry me?" Harper stared at the ring, then at him. "You really don't do anything halfway, do you?" "Only with power tools." She laughed, then reached out and closed her hand around his.
Yes.
1,000 times yes. They didn't rush the wedding. They didn't need to. It happened the following spring, under a canopy of cherry blossoms in the park where Nolan had learned to ride his bike. He stood proudly beside them in a button-up shirt and suspenders, grinning wide as he declared them Team Ellington James forever. There were no press cameras. No headlines. Just family, neighbors, and the hum of something deeply earned. And when Harper danced barefoot in the grass, her hands in Nathaniel's, her laughter echoing through the trees, she didn't feel like a woman who had left behind billions. She felt like someone who had finally found everything. And she had.